Hello all and welcome to my very first video of my channel Gunpla Modify. The purpose of this channel is to document my journey as I delve deeper into all things Gunpla. Essentially what this channel does is it's a time capsule of sorts to see how I progress, face different new and exciting tasks such as scribing and airbrushing, and create my very first dioramas. As I become more comfortable, I'll branch out and test myself with harder and more intricate tasks. To give you a little background on who I am, my name's Jay, and I'm from the Boston area in the United States. I've been building Gunpla for quite some time, many years ago, and then grew up and pursued different hobbies as most of us do. I recently got back into it, and now that I'm older, I have the means to get more in depth with my builds, something I really wasn't able to do in the past. I purchased an airbrush setup, a slew of paints, and various tools to help me along the way. I do have some experience and I've built plenty of high grades and master grades in the past, probably around 20 or so kits, but I never really went beyond the simple snap builds and posing them on my shelves. I used to use a pair of my father's old cutting pliers he used for home repair, ironically, as my nippers because it's all I really had at the time. Things have changed now, though, and I'm completely ready to dive in head first. I plan to push myself to not only improve the way I build kits, but also involve them in a new and exciting way, and that comes in the form of dioramas. This is a hobby all in itself, and it's something I've always wanted to do, but again, I've never really had the time or the means. I went on a slight shopping spree for material, although there are so many different materials for just this hobby alone, I haven't even really scratched the surface of what's available. These dioramas are to further immerse myself and the viewers deeper into the sort of environment these suits and pilots would have experienced. What better way to kick off this channel other than building the most iconic suit that probably exists in the hobby, which is the RX-78-2. This is a simple, easy high grade that will make a little bit more appealing with the use of water slides, scribing, and some paint to alter the shades of what comes right out of the box. There are some areas that we won't get into too much detail with. That's because they'll be covered up by some of the scenery that we plan to put into the diorama. But we hope to achieve a great overall presentation, and this is a way to get my feet wet and get some practice into painting and creating dioramas all in one. We're starting with a cheaper, more readily available kit because if I were to break or lose a part, I have a second kit in reserve that I can always steal these parts from. However, if this were a kit that I had my backlog, such as a Sazabi Vert Ka, I wouldn't be so fortunate in that sense. Plus, this is the most likely what someone new to the hobby would start with, so I wanted to keep it something relevant that the newer crowd can relate to. Now, just a little information about the kit. Like I said, this is a high grade 1 and 1/44th scale RX-78-2 Revive. This kit is fairly simple to assemble, comes with a manual, some cheesy stickers, and of course all the runners. Now, I did buy some water slides to kind of make this kit a little bit more lively and less boring. Opening the kit, we can see that there isn't really much to it. We have three full-size runners, one of which has all our colored pieces on, and then two smaller runners, one of which is polycaps, and the other one is the piece for the beam sabers. Now that we have everything we need in front of us, it's time to get the pieces off the runners, sand them smooth, and then dry build the kit and see what we want to do for scribing and paint. For this first video, we're going to focus mainly just on the building and modifying of the kit, and then in the next video, we'll build the diorama. That way we can kind of build a world that this suit would have existed in, and then we'll bring them both together and present the final product. Now it's build time. I removed the pieces off the runners, making the first cut a few millimeters from the gate, and then the second cut nearly flush with the god hands. The reason we leave a slight nub is to ensure the plastic isn't stressed. We will use our gun primer razor to sand the pieces smooth, and then follow that up with sanding sticks or sponges, depending on the position of the nub. From there, we'll use the gun primer balancers to get that smooth finish where the nubs used to be. A little side note, and no, I'm not sponsored obviously, but the gun primer tools are absolutely amazing. The razor is a glass file that's made using some sort of black magic that erases the nubs in a matter of seconds. and it does so without damaging any of the piece behind it. If you're like me in a past life and just build the kits out of the box and toss them on the shelf, a great pair of nippers like the God Hands I'm using and the products from Gun Primer are literally all you'll ever need in your toolbox. Alright, back to the video. Once we have our pieces removed from the sprues and everything is sanded, we start our assembly. Because this isn't the final assembly and everything will be removed again to be scuffed, primed, and painted, I'm not pushing everything together to the tightest tolerances. The reason being is I don't really want to struggle to have to take it apart. From there, I took a second to see what's visible and what details I want to add, as well as give myself a mental image of where I want the decals to end up. I also start to think of poses to give myself an idea of what the diorama needs to be shaped like to accommodate the suit and the pose of my choice. There are some portions of the kit that I'll add some scribing to, but I didn't go too crazy because this was my first crack at this, and I didn't want to make it look too tacky. Because the panels were mainly flat, it definitely helped me get my bearings. I applied some scribing tape from Display, grabbed my SAB scribers, and got to work. For the next kit, I'll definitely be doing a master grade because it'll give me more confidence with the scale, and I'll most likely try to use some plate for that build too. With the scribing done, the panels sanded to a smooth finish, and everything mounted to an alligator clip, it's time to bust out the Mr. Surfacer 1200 in gray, as well as the pink Mr. Surfacer for the yellow parts. This gives them a much more vibrant pop, rather than using the gray primer. A great resource for those who are looking to see how different paints look on different surfaces. I highly recommend going to Barbatos Rex's channel. He's been a great resource and gave me a little bit more confidence when I was tinkering with all these colors. After some test runs on the spoons, it was time to put all that practice to the test. I will admit that these came out pretty flawless, at least to my eye. I was running my Wada Eclipse at 20 psi, and my primer was thinned to a 1:2 ratio. I was getting some mixed reviews as far as what people were using for their thinning ratio. Some were recommending a 1:1.5, while some were recommending a 1:2.5. I did try both 1.5 and 2.5, and I found that the best of both worlds was the 1:2. It gave me all the coverage I wanted with the speed without webbing or clogging. I'm going to practice a little bit more with the 2.5 ratio because that'll let me get a little bit more longevity with all the primer that I'm using. Once everything was primed, I let the parts sit overnight. The next day, it was time for some color. I'm using Mr. Color lacquers for my paints, and for the frame and metallic parts, I was using a custom blend. It was 50% Mr. Metallic Metal Black, which is GX201, and 50% Mr. Hobby Dark Iron, which is 204. Then I took that and thinned it down, and I absolutely loved the way that this came out. It was like this deep, dark gray, almost black, that was covered in this subtle flake. It was my first time ever mixing paint, so I didn't really know what to expect, but I absolutely loved the outcome. For the other three colors, I also used Mr. Hobby. For white, I used GX01. For blue, I used the Gundam color UG02. And for yellow, it's a gloss yellow, which is C004. I like how each of these turned out, and I used them thin, but didn't mix them with anything else because I thought they were perfect as is. I like the way that the Mr. Hobby leveling thinner works. Even if you aren't glassy with your painting, it has a retarder in the thinner that gives the paint a little bit more time to level itself. Hence the name. However, they do have some that will actually speed up the process for things like metallics. I didn't use this when I was spraying the frame because I tried it on a spoon prior and had a great result. Maybe in the future I'll give it a shot even though there isn't a real heavy flake involved in that mixture. Also, I apologize for the camera not exactly being centered. For some reason it drifted over and I don't know. You'll get a pretty clear picture of the parts in this next clip anyway. With everything painted, everything got a coat of Mr. Hobby UV Cut Super Clear, which is GX112. I reassembled the kit after letting everything sit overnight, and at this stage, I look over the kit to ensure there are no imperfections that need correcting. This is when Tamiya panel lining gets used to further highlight the kit and give it a little bit more depth. This product is extremely easy to use when the surface is smooth and glossy. Simply dab in the panel line we accentuated earlier, and the fluid will glide along the crevice. When you're done, simply take a cotton swab with a small amount of lighter fluid on it and lightly clean the excess. Lighter fluid is much less harsh than the Tamiya acrylic thinner and has less chance of ruining the fresh paint underneath. Look at that little guy. Now it's decal time. I ordered the sheet specific for this kit from New Type. This will help dress up the kit and make it a little bit more like its master grade counterpart, minus the more detailed plastic, obviously. After mentally planning out where the decals are going and which ones we're using, I start cutting and applying. Applying water slides can look difficult, but it's actually not. To apply them, simply cut out the decal you want with a sharp hobby knife, and then completely submerge it in water, warm water, for roughly 10 seconds. Tap the edge on a paper towel to get all the excess water off, and then position yourself where you want the decal. Take some tweezers or a cotton swab, and hold the decal in place while sliding the paper out from underneath it. You could also do the pushing motion, but I find that sometimes wrinkles the water slide. Imagine like an old cartoon where a character pulls the rug out from another. It's kind of like that. I also use two more products from Mr. Hobby. They're called Mark Setter and Mark Softer. Setter acts like a better adhesive and helps the decal stick. Once the water slide is on and you roll it with a cotton swab to remove the excess air and water, you can lightly tap the decal with the Mark Softer. This product makes the decal more pliable, helping it conform to odd shapes and bends. While it's not necessary on flat surfaces, it doesn't hurt. And after spending way longer than I'd like to admit, here's our somewhat final product as far as the suit. There are still a few places I need to clean up, but this will give you a better idea where we stand thus far, and kind of what I wanted the suit to look like. And with that, we've taken this high-grade RX-78-2 Revive from sprues to a scribed and painted kit. In the next episode, we'll start building a riverside scene for this suit to exist in. I cannot thank you enough for the support and you watching this video, and if you enjoyed the content and excited for this journey as much as I am, consider subscribing, liking the video, and let me know down in the comments what types of scenes and suits you'd like for me to build in the future. Thank you again so much and happy building.